21st, 2019. It is 5:30-ish. We are in the Thomas J. Smith Council Chambers. Would you all please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Kathleen, let's do roll call, please.
McCampbell,
Here.
Brinker,
Here.
Wilson, Phillips,
Here.
Graham Murray. Here.
Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody to our meeting on this Martin Luther King Day. And I would like to say before we do have the meeting that for people like that put the work in and put the time in to fight for equal rights, that's part of the reason why I'm sitting at this table today. So I just want to acknowledge that and thank all the people that put in the hard work and the blood and sweat so that I could sit in this chair and represent my city. So feeling truly blessed because of that. Tonight also, I feel truly blessed because I get to recognize somebody who is just a phenomenal citizen. I could go on and say a lot about this guy because I actually know him and I know what type of human being he is. And it's always a pleasure that I get to recognize people that do so much and contribute so much of their time and energy and their life to this community. This is such said person, so it is my privilege and honor to recognize my friend tonight. For many things, but he knows why we're recognizing him tonight for being selfless. Be it known on behalf of the city of Burlington, Iowa, I would like to thank you for being a model Burlingtonian. Your selflessness and commitment to this community over the years is extraordinary, and people like you make people like me glad to know people like you. You're a true rock star, and you help make Burlington a great place to live, work, and play. On January 21st, 2019, this Mayor's Award is presented to John Schultz. Come on down.
Okay.
Gotta get a picture of me and you to get it too. Let me get to this. Oh, we all gotta get in on
Oh,
this.
it's right here.
Well, this is more than what it started off to be. I got a call from Carol Haliski one time, it's around December the 22nd or 23rd, saying that three of the snowflakes had disappeared that were on Snake Alley, and she wanted to know if I could replace them. And I said, well, of course we can build almost anything down here. And so I went up and looked at them to make sure that I could, and took one down to the plant and duplicated it. It took considerably longer than I thought it would, but it turned out okay. It has been a lot of fun, and it's amazing how much recognition that those other three snowflakes got and how much credit I've given for it, when Deb Bazine is the one that really started this, and she's got a lot more time in it than I do, and she's the one I think that really deserves a lot of the credit for it. But it's been fun, and I thank you for this award. It means a lot.
Thank you.
All right. John, you can get on out of here if you'd like. We thank you for coming down. Next on the agenda tonight is the consent agenda. All matters listed under item 1 consent agenda having been discussed are considered to be routine by the city council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussions of these items. If a discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. On the consent tonight, we have the usual, finances and miscellaneous, minutes of previous meetings, payroll and city claims, beer, liquor, wine, and cigarettes, reports, and bonds. We also have a resolution. The first is resolution authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement accepting the Iowa Grants Place Grant, Downtown Riverfront Improvements Project. I don't know if I said that right. Iowa Great Places Grant, Downtown Riverfront Improvements Project. We have hearings set for February 4th, 2019. The first is consideration of an ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 128, Tree Service Business of the City of Burlington Municipal Code. The second is consideration of an ordinance amending various sections of Chapter 151, Trees of the Burlington Municipal Code. The third is consideration of plans and specs for the 2019 Dankwart Park Pool Improvements Project. Then the fourth is consideration of plans and specs for the 2019 Aspen and Dill reconstruction. Is there anybody that would like to have any of these items removed? Anyone that is not named Christopher Repke?
Yeah. Christopher Refke, 2228 Madison Avenue. I'd like to ask you to remove Resolution 1 from the consent agenda, please.
Will do.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? I see none. Council?
Your Honor, I have a motion to approve all listed under item 1 consent agenda except for resolution 1.
Second.
Moved in second. Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Rinker.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Graham Murray. Aye.
Okay. This is a hearing, this is consideration of an ordinance, amending ordinance number 3323, amending section F, applicability of the plan, and section L, application requirements for the urban revitalization plan for the city of Burlington, Iowa. Mr. Tisland.
The urban revitalization plan for the city of Burlington lays out a tax abatement program that is a citywide tax abatement, applies in different areas for residential, commercial, and one change is spelling out multi-residential as well. But part of that plan lays out the timing for an application. Under our current ordinance, it states application must be filed by February 1st after the calendar year in which a project was completed. There's been some question by some applicants on the timing and being able to get that in on time. So what we're looking to change is going to what the state code references for timing, which is a little more lengthy, but basically gives them to February 1st of the assessment year in which the exemption is first claimed, but not later than the year in which all improvements included in the project are first assessed for taxation, or the following 2 assessment years, in which case the exemption is allowed for the total number of years in the exemption schedule. So it gives them 2 additional years to file that tax abatement for the term of the abatement under our program. So this would allow them a longer time period to file, but they'd still only get what the time frame is allowed under the tax abatement program, that 10-year.
With the modified language, and we've had it in other communities that I've been in, and you'll end up with some properties will miss a deadline and they'll get the abatement turned in like a year late. They may pay their full taxes for 1 year on a new construction, but then they'll get, if they chose the 3-year 100% exemption, they'll get the 3 years after that and then go back to the full taxes.
Yep.
So it allows a little bit more flexibility than what we have under a current one, but it's very comparable to what you'll see across the state.
Questions or concerns from the audience? I see none. Council?
I don't have any
I didn't
concerns.
see any problem with it.
Can I get a motion?
Motion to close?
Second.
Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Rinker.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Graham Murray. Aye.
Your Honor, I have a motion for preliminary adoption of the first reading of an ordinance amending ordinance number 3323, amending section F, applicability of the plan, and section L, application requirements of urban revitalization plan for the city of Burlington, Iowa.
Second.
Kathleen?
McCampbell.
Aye.
Rinker.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Graham Murray. Aye.
Before we go on to number 2, I just want to recognize a distinguished gentleman in the second row on the left in the Boy Scout uniform. And your name is, sir? Alex. Thanks for coming down. If you would come up here, I got one of these for you. You want to come and grab this for me real quick? It'll save me a trip. I'm lazy. Oh, my back hurts. It's always a pleasure to have Boy Scouts come on down. Thank you, sir. Okay. Number 2, consideration of the City of Burlington Brownfield Area-Wide Plan.
We have representatives from Confluence and Impact 7G here to go over the details on the plan, the background, and then what's included in the plan. So turn over to Mike Fisher here.
Fish.
Thank you. Good evening. Today I'm here with Chris Shires and Patrick Alford from Confluence, who carried a bulk of weight with this project as well. This was at least an 18-month effort to come up with a very detailed plan in terms of inventory of downtown properties and looking at the potential for redevelopment. So the idea here today is we've come up, the actual formal plan in terms of a document is complete, essentially, with a few minor edits left. And so what we're doing today is recapping it for the council and for the public. And so if you have questions, please ask them today. If you have comments, please get them to us as soon as possible. I know several of you have gotten through that large document that we left with council. So this was a $200,000 grant that the city received from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to conduct this area-wide planning effort for downtown. Had a 2-year implementation time frame with the goal to create a plan that was also synergistic with the city's other EPA brownfield effort. The city's been after properties for a long time in terms of trying to overcome any barriers to redevelopment on idle or underutilized properties in the downtown. And this has been not just the city, but it's also been part of the downtown partnership, the Schmidt area that has been working on this, as well as other partners like Southeast Iowa Regional Planning Commission. So it's really a coordinated effort. It's been going on since at least 2014 with some effort dating back to 2008, 2009 with EPA and Southeast Iowa Regional Planning Commission. So a diligent and persistent effort on part of the city to address troubled properties, and we are making progress. The purpose of the plan was to analyze existing conditions of downtown buildings. We actually have a database, actually a geographic information system that contains all of the downtown buildings in the SMID with all the characteristics of those buildings, including sidewalks, trees, lighting, etc., that is now available for the city, for the GIS users as a tool to address properties and prioritize properties for redevelopment in the downtown. We completed a market study to identify what makes sense from a market standpoint for downtown Burlington. Does it make sense for downtown Burlington to build a large convention center? Does it make sense for them to have a boutique hotel? Does it make sense for them to have residential housing? And if so, how much demand is there? How much can we support in the current environment? So that market study is available online at burlingtonbrownfields.com. The whole entire market study is in there. Very well done. We had a partner that assisted with that. Leland is a company out of the Northwest U.S. that helps with those specific types of studies to narrow down the data and really come up with some good estimates of what the demand is for various types of uses in downtown. So the other purpose is to facilitate assessment, cleanup, and reuse of brownfields. That is, help us prioritize the properties for environmental work that we would be doing with the other grant that the city has. And as that grant actually continues through September 30th, if I'm not mistaken, Eric, of this year. So we have some time. We're continuing to prioritize properties and address those with those other EPA dollars. So what's in the plan? A market study, a redevelopment matrix, catalyst sites. What is a catalyst site? Catalyst site is a site that is intended to spur redevelopment around that site or to make it more exciting to be downtown. Make it more exciting and hopefully profitable for private sector to invest in downtown. To make the downtown a win-win for all those involved. And then the plan also has next steps and an implementation strategy. So where we're at today, if you look at this pyramid up on the screen, where we're at today is we're actually have the plan complete. We have to give a lot of credit to the public, the city of Burlington public were most helpful in this. We had great attendance at our public meetings, more than I would have anticipated for something like this. So it tells me that the city's engaged, that the city's interested, the city at large is interested in where they end up 15, 20, 25 years from now. Because some of these strategies are long-term strategies. And you have a community here that, you got some diehards in here. They are truly engaged, and a lot of that input at those public strategies went into the concepts that Patrick and Chris will present. So I have to give the public here some really good credit. So we are at the implementation, the top part of the pyramid. And the implementation is going to involve more work. It's always more work, meaning we've got to find some more money. The Great Places grant that you talked about, Mayor, that's part of it. That's part of implementation. Getting the downtown riverfront done. Getting the streetscapes done with the DOT Tiger Grant. That's part of implementation. Those are the things we need to do to continue to spur investment in the downtown. So that's where we're at, and with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Chris Shires to talk more about the actual contents of the plan itself. Are there any questions at this point that I can answer?
Mike, thank you. So really quickly here, I'm just gonna go kind of high level through what's in the document itself. So it's broken down into 5 sections, 5 chapters. That first chapter, Mike did allude to. This is the introduction, the reason why do we have this plan, what's its use and purpose. Also include a summary of the market analysis conducted, all that site assessment data, that GIS data that Mike talked about, as well as a summary of the public input process and what we heard, what was the results of that. In a moment, Patrick's going to walk through the 3 catalyst sites. I'll skip over that one. And then section 3 is all about the downtown and different improvement strategies, other tasks that can be undertaken as a part of this process. 4 is a summary of the implementation steps, as well as strategies for implementation. And then 5 is kind of a catch-all appendix where we have all the background data, and then the entire market study. So if you're going to focus in on something, it's really those first 4 chapters. And so with this, Patrick will run through the catalyst sites.
Smoother transitions. I know. Well, as we discussed in the work session last week, when we started this project, we had identified 2 primary catalyst sites that were going to be the focus of our creative energy. Those being the Dresser Rand site here on the west end of downtown and the typewriter shop building. As we moved through this process, I started to evaluate opportunities in these 2 locations. We quickly identified a need to look a little bit larger scale, a little broader range throughout downtown. We stopped the work, the conceptual work that we were doing on the typewriter shop because we did not identify what we thought was a really strong user or use for that building going into the project, and we refocused our attention down to the riverfront. We looked and spent some time at the Moose building and subsequently let that one sit when we learned that there was a private developer in town that was already moving forward with development plans on that project. And when the Moose building dropped off of our radar, we looked elsewhere and identified the Chittenden and Easton Company buildings on South 3rd, just below the BNSF line, as a potential great opportunity for some additional development. And so as you look at the planning area map, you can see the boundary of the SMID outlined here. You see that these 3 sites really start to anchor some interesting 4 corners of town, if you will. Dresser Rand here on the west, the riverfront on the east, and then the Chittenden and Eastman along here on South 3rd. And really, if you think about South 3rd transferring into North 3rd, you've got a really nice kind of connection that's created between the library down 3rd to this Chittenden and Eastman district. Our goal here was to develop some concept for what these spaces could be developed into that could be great recreational, retail, hospitality type uses on these sites. So the first one that we're going to focus on is Chittenden and Eastman. We have a dead-end street that's bordered on the north by the BNSF line. And so we really envision this as a pedestrian-only space that becomes an outdoor plaza to serve ground floor businesses that could locate in this area. We have great architectural stock in these buildings and a wonderful opportunity for redevelopment there. We even went so far as to look at the whole of these buildings for multifamily residential or commercial development, and recognizing the overall scale of these things, we think that the initial development would occur at the ground level, support that with exterior space, pedestrian space, and some defined, safe, controlled pedestrian crossings at that BNSF line. And all of a sudden, you start to link this district into all of the development that's occurring along South Third, and tap into the energy that's created at those intersections there. So looking at this a little bit deeper, you can see that there's some architectural modifications done to the buildings, but really this is about a streetscape and a pedestrian space. It's trees, it's closed off to traffic, it's water fountains and lighting, just a really exciting outdoor space that these businesses kind of feed off of. The second site that we looked at, and we recognized this as an opportunity, but also certainly there are some hurdles. This area indicated as the area of focus is currently occupied by the U.S. Postal Service. It's their downtown branch. But we saw that this block here between Washington and Jefferson, right here between Main and Front, really becomes this primary connector to the riverfront development. And as we look at the existing plans in place for the riverfront, we saw that there was a real lack of family-oriented pedestrian space attached to the riverfront development. So what we wanted to do was present an idea of a catalyst, or not a catalyst park, but a destination park in the central part of downtown. The idea for locating it here is it really pulls people down Washington and Jefferson towards the riverfront and gives them a place to play, to gather with their family. There's a ton of different amenities that we proposed in this. It got some interesting feedback from the public when we presented it at one of our public meetings. And it really adds a number of amenities to the riverfront that the current plans don't have incorporated. Just some different shots. There's a number of different ideas here. There's nature play, there's some gateway markers, there's a laminar fountain but not a splash pad, different beast altogether. Some destination type playground equipment and amenities. So some really interesting stuff there. And then the third catalyst site, which was really the first when we began this whole thing, was Dresser-Rand. This one we knew was brownfield. They'd have already done some mitigation on-site. Ownership had changed hands, and thus again currently. And we looked at it in two parts. The idea being that there needs to be some sort of a retail or hospitality type development here to draw some interest to the site, and then there needs to be some use of the space that could do some things for the public, could manage stormwater, could assist with urban revitalization, or urban reforestation is the word that I'm looking for here. So on the north side of this is the cold storage facility. We saw this as a potential brewery, restaurant type gathering space with all the associated outdoor amenities, some reconfiguration of the buildings to accomplish this. I'll quick through those quickly. And then on the south side of the site, we wanted to do two things. We wanted to create a trailhead for recreational trail users. We know the trail is going to come down and along the east side of the tracks here and then into downtown. And we wanted to do something on the west side of the site here that kind of captured that open space, which currently gets some stormwater, but also is not a site that we can do a lot of development on because of the contaminated soils that are encapsulated there. And so we saw this as more of a passive recreational space that could be a park and an opportunity to plant some trees on what we call drumlins, which are basically berms that keep us and those trees from going into the soils below, but then we could farm those trees out and use them for the downtown streetscape improvements. And so provide associated parking and links to the trail connections there, along with some fencing, some decorative materials, and really kind of dress it up. All right, so that's the catalyst sites. Are there any questions on the concepts that were presented for those?
Now, when you say trailhead, is this where a bike trail initiates so some people could drive a vehicle and park it there? I'm not sure what you mean by trailhead exactly.
Technically speaking, this wouldn't be a trailhead in the sense that the trail starts and stops there, but we know that the bicycle route and new trails are going to come through this site. And because it's on the west end of downtown, rather than have trail users specifically come into downtown and try to park and go back out, this provides a more centralized location where people can go in both directions along those recreational trails.
Any other questions?
And then how difficult is it to relocate a post office?
If we were on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the most difficult, it's a 9.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, it would be a challenge, but we know that based on flooding history here in town that the post office has successfully relocated, at least temporarily, in Burlington, so it could be done again.
Yeah.
And we actually did reach out to the US Postal Service to have some conversations about the potential for that. Admittedly, we got some stop, don't go any further kind of responses, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
Thank you.
All right, Chris, going to conclude with next steps.
And so, towards the back of the book, we have our different primary goals and strategies, our next steps and action items, but they really kind of break down into, you know, continue doing what you're doing, continue with the downtown improvements, the streetscape improvements that are now planned, continuing with your riverfront improvements, and then reference this plan as a marketing document, as a marketing tool, that the more we broadcast this plan, it does have the kind of the priority sites, as well as the catalyst sites of, hey, these are future opportunities as we continue to see success and the ball start rolling. And one of the last things is just this tremendous, and I don't have a better word than opportunity, for the new opportunity zone designation for all of downtown and then some. This is an unchartered funding opportunity that we really are not sure of the incredible potential it can bring for new dollars, new investment dollars into the community. This is really exciting. We do not have a lot of these across the country. And where they are, they're often not in such a downtown with such potential. Some of them are in the middle of nowhere, literally. And so having an opportunity zone as established by the federal government is a tremendous opportunity. And so, yeah, that's something I'm not sure I can be strong enough about.
You gotta work on your present
I gotta
delivery
come
of
up
this
with
is
a-
exciting. You
I
gotta,
gotta come up with another word than opportunity for opportunity zones. But with that, we continue to tweak and adjust little typos and edits and little things like that. And so if anyone on the council has any comments for us today, if you do, as you're reading it, see something later and you want to send it to one of us or Eric, we can sure take a look at that and make sure that that have gotten everything buttoned up and finished up, and we can get that last final approved draft on the website. So any questions for any one of us on the team?
council, do quest.
I guess I'd like to have the contact info, because I do have some thoughts but I want to go through the document a couple more times, because
Okay.
it's a lot.
It is, yes.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And we gave you 11 by 17. I have a 8.5 by 11 here, but the print's a little small.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Gentlemen, we appreciate you guys.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Questions or concerns from the audience?
Eric Renteria, 521 North Fifth Street. I went to the presentation where they took the input from the community on this, and this project seems to have a little bit of a life of its own, and the feedback was I think challenging. The challenge is that a project like this seems to get birthed, and then it gains a life of its own. And the feedback seems to kind of go into the ethos and never gets revisited. My question is as this thing gets rolling forward and you guys review these documents, will there be another opportunity to revisit this and make a decision as to whether or not this is something that we want to pursue, or does this presentation happen and then it all goes back somewhere and the next thing we know it's being rolled out without further input?
My understanding, there's more community involvement.
Well, when you say rolled out, what's your expectation as to what this does?
Well, so there's several parts to it. One is that we've spent a lot of money, we being the American taxpayer, have spent a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to come up with this idea of what to do with these brownstones. And I understand that's a unique opportunity because of our physical layout. But there's a lot of things that it doesn't address, and there's a lot of challenges that were brought up in the meetings at the library. And so when I see this and I see opportunity for investment, I want to know who's making that investment. I want to know what those dollars are. I just want to know kind of how this thing's, it seems to me like there's someone out there who's making investment. Usually when that happens, what I hear is the city has to kick in a big chunk of money to get the project going. And then we hit the taxpayers with a grant from the outside that pays the rest of the bill. So I just want to know, I want to know who they are that's making the investment. I want to have further opportunity to have comment on this as a citizen. And I have a lot of concerns about this project and the impact that it has on existing downtown businesses.
So I think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but I view this plan as simply an outline, which provides kind of a vehicle for future potential private investment. To be able to answer some of those questions right now, we'd have to know who's making the investment, what the project is, what the amount is, and I don't know that we have any of those answers right now, nor could we until somebody comes forward and says, listen, we have the opportunity to review your brownfield assessment, and we would like to explore the possibility of doing X at X site, and then we would get into some of those conversations. But until then, I don't know how there's any way that we can answer that question.
There's never gonna be we're gonna do it without a public input. I mean, citizens would have to vote on it.
Right, so the first thing that I would ask when we're going through this is, what's the timeline for this project? I mean, are we just throwing stuff out into the gray? Because there doesn't seem to be much there.
And that's the thing, there is no projects. I mean, we're not doing anything outside of creating this outline, which is allowed to us by the EPA through this grant process, which the goal of that is to market the opportunities that have been presented in this. So there is no project as far as timeline goes. The possibility that nobody comes forward in 20 years and so nothing may happen, or we could put this out there and have 50 potential private investors into projects over the next couple of years. I mean, there's just no way to figure that out.
I think it's real similar to the TESCA plan back in the 80s, and I might be one of the few people in this room that remember that, just because I was plugged in at the time, thanks. But the TESCA plan was exactly what we have downtown now. It was more shops like yours, more night entertainment facilities, more restaurants, and versus the big box stores that we had like Penny's and that kind of thing, and Sears. And that kind of it was kind of a guideline that everybody looked at from time to time, but the city never really did anything with that besides, okay, here's a guideline, what we'd like to have, and that was a catalyst for people to think about that type of investment. So,
Right,
Eric,
I understand
I don't know,
that,
that was the 80s, and that's just now taking place here, so I don't know how long. it's
Right,
gonna
so
be
I
like
understand that, but my concern is that we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that are being spent on something that to me is so gray and without form, and frankly, not very helpful to existing downtown businesses. So I have a lot of concerns about this program, and I just want to make sure that there's continued communication, and that this doesn't go into, some planning. It seems like it goes out of public view and comes back as a plan, and there isn't. And I may not be speaking specifically about this one, but other programs that have, we kind of get a taste of them, they go away, and then they come back complete and in the process of being implemented. And even though there is public input at that time, the whole process of the decisions that were made are made out of the private, where we don't see it.
Sometimes it seems that way. And
Yes, it does.
So I understand where you're coming from. Sometimes it just people just miss it. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Absolutely.
But I understand exactly what you're saying. So, yeah, I think we need to be mindful of that. But again, I think, and I'm waiting for Mr. Tislin. Do you want to have anything to add to that, or we've got Impact 7G here? But my understanding again that it was a template, that it was still fluid, and if something was going to be done, that it was going to, that we were gonna bring it back to the public, that we were gonna talk about, that there was nothing written down that was, this is what's gonna happen, but it's a starting place. Again, you just can't start from scratch. You have some.
And
you have
Eric,
someplace
one
to
thing
start.
I'd add is, I understand that the benefit to current downtown businesses isn't in black and white in this outline. However, in the event that somebody takes this and makes an investment into downtown, whether it's additional residential units or additional shopping units, which are drawing people to the area, those are gonna be the real benefits seen, not just for your store, but everybody else and all the other things that are kind of active and moving
Yep.
forward in the downtown area.
And I get that, and I mean, I think there is potential to have some great things, happen. The concern is that, you know, the new shiny penny gets all the attention.
Always.
You know, so for those of us who've already invested in downtown, you know, we wanna make sure that we're a part of that. And if there's, federal monies or state monies or program monies of some sort, you know, we would like to be included in that, if possible, and have that opportunity presented to us as well. Because a lot of these things, it feels like they happen around us, and it's like, I've been busting my butt down here for years trying to get things going, and somebody comes in, flashes the new penny, the new program, and all of a sudden they have $17 million and things are happening. And boy, sure would be nice if those of us who are knocking it, you know, hard every day can be a part of that. So,
Right on.
that was just my point. Okay.
Well, and one thing I'd say is you're definitely a part of it. And the reason I say that is because I went to every single public, meeting that they had, and I saw you at a lot of them. And I know that you spoke to a lot of the gentlemen, they're sitting here now. And I've talked to you about specific issues downtown, so that, the things that you're telling us, the messages that you're conveying are being considered when these things are taken into account. So
Oh, I greatly appreciate that.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else from the audience?
Eric, how will you be using this as time moves forward from a staff perspective and planning?
I think kind of the area-wide plan purpose summarizes a lot of it. I mean, using it as a resource to evaluate what are the conditions downtown, looking at the market study, what can be promoted as new businesses or new developments or new things that come into the community, looking at the catalyst sites, maybe not necessarily what exactly is planned out here, but what could happen on those sites and what impact could those sites have on the downtown as a whole, and then continuing to use this to market for other opportunities, whether it's the opportunity zones, other cleanup grants, or other things that help give us a background to go after these other resources.
So next week, next week Jeremy Hess will be here from the partnership, and he'll make a presentation on opportunity zones. And he's not gonna give you a full-fleshed discussion because on a national level, they still don't really have the operating rules in place for everything that is involved with that. I mean, they have a pretty good concept, but it's just a new program. As he goes through that, and you think through the sites that are in here, not just the 3 catalyst sites, but there's a full inventory of the facilities in the downtown. Someone who's looking to take advantage of the opportunity zones, this is a pretty good inventory of different facilities throughout the downtown area, throughout the SMID district, of different things that they could use as a spot to have an investment occur in. So from that perspective, for private development to be involved, and there's some coordination that has to be done, but this gives, regardless of where it is in the downtown, a good backdrop to do that stuff. We don't have projects necessarily that are out of the 3 catalyst sites that we have that are identified now. Now, long-term, Eric has mentioned, the trail going through the Dresser Rand site, we're trying to, even if we turn that land over, make sure that we have access that allows the trail to go through there. But if the land stays in our hands, it gives some further options. This becomes some guidance for them as they start thinking around what does a trail through that area look like. And are you in the neighborhood of doing a trail through there now, Eric?
Not at this time specifically, and looking at Mount Pleasant Street and some of the work we've done there with shared bike lanes and our Flint River Trail downtown and how those all interconnect and get throughout the community. So this is kind of in the middle of that concept, but we're not at a point where we're applying for grants or putting in new trail system in this direct area, but it is in the long-term plans, and then having that ability down the road doesn't deter us from continuing to do that.
And that's a 5 to 10 year process down the road where you're probably in line for any trail to go through this area. Would that be about
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
In terms of the development along the riverfront, we've got a lot of associated things that are already going on, which is part of why you, I think, listed that as a catalyst site. How do you take advantage of that and build off of it? And I think there is, that may be something that comes up as time goes on. This study identifying it certainly opens it up, and you are correct. The areas that are identified in a study such as this open us up for a little bit more flexibility over time for things that are listed there. The nice thing about this document, though, not only is there the 3 specific catalyst sites, this document identifies a lot of properties that you could use as a basis for if a grant funding opportunity comes up down the road, taking some of the concepts that are in the catalyst sites and implementing them in one of those other locations.
And those are not, the thing I noticed, they're not just the idle buildings or the vacant buildings, they're buildings currently owned. So I think, to Eric's point, a lot of those buildings are gonna be targeted, and so then you go to the owner and work with them. For me, you know, being pretty much a lifelong resident of Burlington, there are several times in our history where I lamented the fact that we weren't more pushing the envelope or more forward-looking. And I do like the fact that we are looking forward and have plans in place as guidelines. I think that's, admittedly, though, sometimes it's a little scary when you start talking in the future. I mean, what's gonna happen? There's a lot of gray area, but I'd much rather be in this process or at the forefront of these type of things than playing catch-up with other communities, so.
Anything else?
Have
Right
a
on.
motion to close?
Second.
Kathleen?
McCampbell,
Aye.
Rinker,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Graham Murray.
Aye.
Can I get a motion?
Your Honor, I have a resolution approving the stormwater, no, that's the wrong one.
The resolution.
I crossed off the wrong one. Let's backtrack here. Your Honor, I have a resolution accepting the City of Burlington Brownfield Area-Wide Plan.
Get a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. Kathleen, let's vote.
McCampbell,
Aye.
Rinker,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Graham Murray.
Aye.
Okay. Bring us to our resolution. We have a resolution approving stormwater utility fee credit program.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Drive careful.
Yeah, give me one.
Oh, second. Sorry, Matt. You
Mr.
asked, you
McGregor.
get it.
Good evening.
Oh, thanks, bro.
The resolution in front of you would approve the conversation and the credit program that we talked about in the discussion item. I took the comments that, I needn't change that presentation though, did I? I took the comments that were talked about on Monday last week, and I changed them in the program reference pages and then the application. Just as a little bit of a background from carryover from last week, the stormwater credit system is in response to the ERU methodology that was put into place as of July 1. The stormwater utility fee credit program would offer a credit for for projects that are done to lessen the impact on the stormwater system. This would be for non-residential users, commercial and industrial, and then some multifamily. We've broken it down into 5 different levels of credit. I think the best way to explain levels 1 through 4 are for reduction of the impact of that property through some sort of retainage method. The one thing I did not discuss last time is a property could be eligible for levels 1, 2, and 3, since you could add up the percentage of credit by the, you're retaining a lot of water at that point, but then you would have a fairly significant credit off of your bill. And then the one that we discussed was the level 5 credit, which is the direct discharge, and that should be 75% per our conversation last week. So people's properties who are directly discharging into a body of water, such as the Mississippi River, would be eligible to receive credit on their stormwater utility bill. So, I gave you, or I sent you kind of a mock-up of what I thought would be eligible for level 5. There might be more that I missed, but it seemed to be kind of in the ballpark of what I thought, so. I can answer any questions on this.
Let me address the audience first. Any questions or concerns from the audience?
Eric Renteria, 521 North Fifth Street. Just a observation. And maybe this is one where I was asleep at the wheel, but at our store we received a notice that our water was going to get shut off, and I couldn't figure out why, because we're on auto pay. So every month they bill us, and then so I went down to the water company and I said, look, I have this odd bill here for like $28 for a couple months, and they said, well, that's your clean water stormwater utility bill that was added. It's a new bill that was added, so it's separate, so it wasn't attached to your auto pay. And I immediately thought two things. One is I recalled this conversation about the water runoff. But the thing that struck me was that I watched last week the council go through a lot of the budgets for the different departments and the increasing costs of all of those. And those increasing costs get passed to us. And this is another example where it may not seem like much, but it's every taxing entity, and it's a huge amount of taxes when you add them all together. And so as you go through this process and you look at adding bills. One is that either I was really asleep at the wheel, or the communication about that new bill coming was not very effective, and I don't know which one it was. I might have totally missed that. I've been really busy lately, but I would encourage the council to be acutely aware that these small increases in fees and bills or taxes, however you want to label them, cumulatively have a tremendous impact. And Burlington's one of the highest taxed cities in the state, and that's only getting worse. The role of the council is not for me to say, but somebody's got to push back against the state and federal government, and if I do it, I don't have as much pushback as you do, and maybe you don't see that as your role, but I do. I see that as your role. To defend the citizens of Burlington from these kinds of programs. This water separation program is an unbearable expense to the citizens of Burlington, and it's just amazing to me how our state and federal governments continue to push this down, and we as a city, we just kind of take it. That costs all of us, and it's reflected in things like these bills that I don't know if you heard from anybody else other than me on this, but it kind of caught me by surprise. I had no idea.
Just so you know, at one point in time, I know pretty much everybody on the council was sending in emails. Just because that something doesn't get changed doesn't mean that people aren't working to try to get stuff stopped. But you have to understand, Mr. Renteria, that a lot of times you can bark and scream from my experience. That we can bark and scream and yell, but if the mind is already made up at a state or federal level, we can never stop getting our voice heard, but.
Right, I understand that.
That's
But the Iowa Constitution states that cities have the right to home rule, and that we get to make our own, and so we have to at least fight the fight, and that's your personal, however you feel about it. If that's a battle that you want to take on or not, I can't say.
Well, one thing
it's a tough battle.
One thing I will tell you as far as fighting the fight is one of the things we're working on right with all of those things, it costs money to fight that fight, and there's a lot of variables there, so it is not something that we're just giving up on, and we understand that it's an extreme burden, but we are working on it.
Yeah, I don't think it's a great position to be in, but I understand that.
Part of it is, and Jim's alluded to this many times, we have to continue to attempt to make progress and show that we're doing those things in order to be able to get that order renegotiated. And this is one of the tricks or one of the tools that we're using in order to get that done.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Renneria. Anybody else from the audience? I see none. Council? None here. Okay, Kathleen, let's vote.
McCampbell,
Aye.
Rinker,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Graham Murray.
Aye.
Okay, brings us to our resolution. We have a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign an agreement accepting the Iowa Great Places Grant Downtown Riverfront Improvements Project.
Second.
Mr. Ripke.
Chris Rupke, 2228 Madison Avenue. Couple questions first. By accepting this grant, which I understand is $300,000 for certain things, you're then obligated to use it. Are you able ever, if you decide not to do some of the things or do all those things, can you return the grant?
You're not gonna return the grant. One of the project that is closest to not being done out of here would be the floating boardwalk, the dock. If we don't get the boating infrastructure grant, the tier 2 on that, we would have to have a discussion with the state, see if they would allow us to go through the process of taking that off as a project that's part of this. The funding for this grant doesn't go to it. It's listed as a matching project within here. Given the scope of what's being asked to be done, it wouldn't be required. I think they'd work with us to have that taken off.
When will we know that?
What's that?
When will we know?
Well,
whether-
we still haven't gotten so the boating infrastructure grant has 2 tiers. One is
Engineering.
the engineering, which hopefully at some point we get an agreement back. I assume until the government shutdown ends, we won't see that. We had a time frame in there to try to have that engineering submitted this fall in September. And that would put us in line then to go and request the tier 2, so about a year from now.
Okay.
So we're not gonna know on that part whether we can get that or not. The language on the Great Places project doesn't list, and this is gonna be different than what I sent to you in an email.
Okay.
It doesn't list a requirement from the city to be putting any of our own funds into it. If the dock is taken out of the picture, if we end up not getting the boating infrastructure grant and are just doing the, I'm sorry, I'm gonna get it
Splash
wrong.
pad,
The
outdoor
splash
seating.
pad, the shade structures, and then that outdoor amphitheater.
And all that has to be decided yet too.
We would be doing those 3 projects with this funding and the Tiger grant. So there would be no city, the way this is written, it is written with the idea that there's no city money going into that. If we do get that boating infrastructure grant and we go forward with the docks, there is a city cash match required on that. And that's where you're gonna end up spending about $900,000 total of city funds. We're putting $100,000 in that's listed out of hotel motel this next year towards the boating infrastructure grant project, the dock. And then in a couple of years, we'd be looking at about $800,000. All of the projects together, and this is what I sent to you, Chris, is gonna have is gonna require us to bond for somewhere in that $800,000 range. You asked, what does that mean for property tax increase, and what did I, 14?
I think 14 cents, which
14
doesn't
cents.
sound like much. Go ahead.
And with that, I mean, we don't change our debt service levy from year to year. We try to keep it even, and then as the years go on, we want to bring that down. What this has more of an impact in is saying that we're not going to do other projects. And what are we typically doing with GO bonds? It's street work. So it has an impact over what we're able to prioritize out as street work that gets done from year to year. So that's more of what the hidden cost is of this that you were wanting to try to address.
Okay, but one of the reasons I just, and part of my why I'm pulling this out is, I have to say I'm opposed to the boat project, the boating dock, and then, which also includes restrooms and showers downtown. We have a marina. If they can make money off of doing it, they would be doing it and doing the improvements they needed to do to draw in the boaters and take care of that. The city shouldn't be responsible for that, for transient boaters up and down the river. And so my worry is accepting this grant puts you, then you're gonna have to do it. And again, my concern is the older neighborhoods. We need to be putting $800,000 into the older neighborhoods. Nobody's gonna wanna come through downtown if you gotta go through neighborhoods you don't wanna go through. Now look at Detroit. I mean, the first time I ever saw emergency phones along the road was going to Detroit. you know, for safety. You had to go through the bad neighborhoods to get downtown. And so if that starts happening here, you're not gonna improve the downtown, nobody's gonna wanna be here. So you need to start putting this money, $900,000 in that, into North Hill, South Hill, whatever, Sanderson Park. That's where the money needs to go to start improving them, to bring up the housing values, to bring up the housing stock in those neighborhoods, just by putting emphasis there rather than downtown. And I know that speaks now. You got the Tiger Grant, you're gonna be putting a lot of money downtown now. So I wanna say no to this grant, because you don't wanna put on yourself something you don't wanna have to do and put a burden on the taxpayers. So.
You're consistent, my friend.
Well, I'm trying to be.
You're on that
trying
one.
to be. I mean, I have a great concern for the city, and if it's not, my no's are not, I'm just a stuck in the mud type person. I want to see, though, the older neighborhoods, you've tried to do things, but I never see things continue. They don't seem to last. It's like a little bit here, a little bit there. It needs to be an effort, and all of them, North Hills, South Hills, all of them. Because the more they go down, the more it makes other things harder to bring up.
Thank you, sir.
So, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming down. Anybody else on this issue? Council?
I'd say to Chris, I'd be interested to hear what his ideas are for taking that money and putting it into those neighborhoods.
Well,
So my understanding is, if we have, you ever heard the expression, you can't put horseshoes on a cow? You have a pocket of money sourced for one thing, you cannot use it for something else. That was my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong.
I've never heard that before, but that's good.
Bond for just about anything, but you're also talking about taking public money and putting it into private
I
housing,
don't think
so
you can
that's a
move the money
difficult
from one
conversation to
place
have.
to one pocket of money.
I can say from the marina standpoint, Chris, is, yeah, we're doing that. We're looking at putting some exterior public restrooms in for transient boating. We're pursuing some grants as well. The thing that I was interested about the public restroom facilities is for when we have public events or all kinds of people downtown walking around. There's a lot of times when, like during the criterium, it always cracks me up when merchants put a sign up, no public bathroom. Why wouldn't you want them to come in your building and look around? That, it's just, it seems idiotic to me, but they do it. So we are looking at some of those things because it is an interest to have, and it is a tourism type item. So, but I understand where you're coming from. But I just wanted to say on the marina side, we're looking at the same things. We don't have the same facilities.
Are we good?
You're perfect.
Kathleen, let's vote.
McCampbell,
Aye?
Rinker,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Graham Murray.
Aye.
Okay. This brings us to the end of our meeting tonight. We'll entertain comments from the audience. Is there one? Mr. Enright?
I'm gonna beat an old dog here. Eric Renteria, 521 North Fifth Street. I came a couple weeks ago and talked about parking. Said couldn't talk about it, wasn't on the agenda. looked at tonight's agenda, it wasn't on there. Was wondering when it's gonna be on the agenda.
James?
We're, from a staff perspective, we're not in a position where that's one of the topics that we're pushing to the forefront. If you wanna push it faster, we can, but we're not gonna have anything
Can you
prepped
wait till,
for
can
it.
you wait till after we could do
We
it?
still don't have the wayfinding signs yet, do we?
They're here.
They're here, but they're just not up?
Correct.
Okay.
Is there any way we can get it on there, say, by the end of February?
Because there's no point in bringing it on if we're not ready to answer any questions.
I mean, we can have it for the end of February, that's more, I don't know whether you're still, from a staff perspective, in a position where you're gonna be adding a tremendous amount more than what's been done in the past.
As far as from the parking plan, and, yeah, we haven't met in a couple months on that.
If-
That's- but
I'll
you
say,
all
let me-
can
Let me
still
ask you,
talk
if you just
about
want it on there so that you can, so that we can talk about it, but you know already right
It's-
now
but
that we're
it's-
not prepared
it's-
to.
My only point is the
I'm-
project's not complete yet.
I'm not opposed to letting you get ready, whatever that should mean. At the meeting a year ago, I was told 6 months, we'd have a plan, it would improve things, and if not, we would revisit it. So I really wanna know what we have revisited it, and now we're doing what? That's really where I'm going.
We'll, as a matter of fact, I'll go with Mr. Tisdale. I can call you personally and let you know when we'll get that on so that you can come down and have your say, my friend.
I appreciate it.
No problem. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'm not a public speaker. I'll shake and I'll tremble. Second of all, I thank all of you for being here, because I would never want to be on any kind of council anywhere. I've tried that in the past. Third, I haven't been to a city council meeting in I don't remember 20 years. Fourth, I probably have missed a lot of things that I'm going to ask about that you've already discussed, figured out, solved, and I've just missed the boat. I apologize for my ignorance that way. I agree with the gentleman about North Hill. I live on, I didn't tell who I was or where I live.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Susan Van Pelt, 1037 North 7th. Snow removal, I think our city does a great job on snow removal. But this is not the city's fault. We live on North 7th in Iowa. We have no garage. That's our own choosing. And also the streets on North Hill, Ash, Arch, North, Franklin, 7th. We're all skinny streets, side streets. And because through the years, apartments and everything, so there's more cars. Through the years, people, instead of having one car, they have two, teenagers have a car. So that's our own fault. So what I'm asking is, there's a way that we can help the city with the snow removal. And you may have already talked about this in the past, and I have missed that. You know how we have snow routes? And somebody said they may be doing this already on the South Hill. Could we, like on even days, say we're gonna do the north side of the street and the east side of the streets, so all the cars could move on the opposite? Then on the odd days, do the south and west, so everybody would know where to put their car, because right now, we try to get everybody, that's all parked on this side. That way the plow can go down, at least get half the street. So the plows aren't going back and forth with cars. If you knew that that was gonna be an ordinance, I don't care if it's even north and southwest, or, whatever, but have am I making sense?
Yes. In fact,
Perfect sense.
In fact,
Okay.
we
have
have
this
discussed that,
And
it's a thought for the.
I don't think it should be a thought, I think it should be an action.
But
And
this,
I-
but
and I
again, these are
think-
comments, so we
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
have a back and forth
Yeah.
about it, but please
And
continue.
because I would be willing, more than willing, I have been for the past 30 years, we try to stay in front of the snow plow. Okay, we hear them over there, we run out and move our car. We talk to other neighbors, let's all put our cars on this side, and we go ahead and shovel this side, trying to help us. So I think this is the way we could help the city, we could get all the cars parked on one side of the street, whatever. The other thing is, I'm getting scared here.
Take your time, hon.
Leaf collection. I think it's great that they come and pick up the leaves, but I think maybe we need to extend it longer in the spring and in the fall. the seasons changing or whatever. I just see more people. And you're also, we're not in the days where there's just one person working. We have blended families. We have both spouses working different shifts. You know, there's the whole dynamics of what a family is has changed. And I think just those weekends, we can't always do it. So maybe it'd be possible to do it a week later every time to help the citizens out. Also, I'm from a generation of we raked our leaves and removed them. And so I have a problem downtown when a city worker blows the leaves. We're just relocating them. They're gonna blow back in the front, or they're gonna blow back. Why don't we just pick them up? You've all probably studied the cost, that maybe it's cheaper just to have a city maintenance person go and blow them every day compared to just having a rake and a leaf bag and picking them up and get rid of them. I don't know, but it seems like we just relocate them instead of getting rid of them. Garbage trucks. I was against the thing we have, but we have it. As I said, we don't have a garage and we don't use the alley. And this is just my personal opinion about this. Is it possible, like we have an old-fashioned brick alley, and through the years it's sunk with the weight of the garbage trucks, you know what I'm saying? So is it possible that, like I live on the corner of North and Iowa, and when they come down the alley to get our garbage, if we could, since it's on wheels, if we could bring it to the front on the curb like some of the other streets do, to save the wear and tear on those alleys, because as those trucks get heavier and go down, those bricks, and then we come back in spring, they put more of that black stuff in there, whatever that is, and that washes, and they just keep repeating that. And so, is there a way, if, I know none of the other people on North Hill would agree with me, but maybe if we could just bring those.
I was gonna ask, do your neighbors know you're here right now?
No, they don't. Actually, I'll tell you something, Matt. This is very spontaneous. You know how you wonder, and you ask other people, have you ever wondered? And everybody's just wondering. So just real quickly, I wrote this stuff down and thought I'll just come in here and wonder. Okay, so I would gladly wheel my garbage around because I do look at those brick alleys. They are historical, and the weights of those trucks are. And we're not fixing them, we're just putting more stuff on top of them. The other thing, being that I live on North Hill, and I should have studied this more than I did. But the fire trucks and the police cars, ambulance, when they have to go to Sunnyside, there's only Central, 5th, 6th, and 7th Street, 8th Street that they can go on. And 8th Street's very busy. And I don't live on 8th Street, but that street a couple of years ago was full of potholes. Now we have speed bumps where they just put that stuff in there instead of fixing those streets. And all the years I have lived in our house, which I don't remember how many years it's been, I don't recall any of those streets from Central to 4th, from spring on up, ever being done, except Central. I know 7th hasn't, 8th hasn't. I think it's time for those streets, wherever he is, on North Hill, being taken care of. I see so many other wonderful things in other communities in our town being done, but I don't see a lot done on North Hill. It's a changed neighborhood, but I think we should have nice streets too, nice curbs. And I do feel bad for, maybe when you're in a fire truck or a police car, you don't know what it's like going up those speed bumps. I don't know. But that is the only access they have are those streets to get to Oak Street, to get to Sunnyside, to get to those people. So I think they need to be maintained well. I think I did it all. But thank you very much for listening to me, and I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you, Mrs. Van Pelt. Thank you for coming down, and you got your message out to the right ears, so thank you so much. I think your neighbors will appreciate everything you had to say except for one thing that you brought up, so. All right. Anybody else from the audience, comments or concerns? I see none. Again, distinguished gentlemen, thank you for coming down tonight. So good to have you. Mr. Tisdale. How about Mr. Tislett? Okay, Kathleen? She's got new jewelry, everybody. Can you have the zero with? We'll do it later. Peanut butter?
Just be sure and be thinking about getting your tickets for the Chocoholic Frolic, February 9th. I did this event last year. It was really fun. It's a lot of fun, and the hours are extended. I believe it's 1 to 5, So grab some girlfriends, grab some guy friends, stop and get a cold beverage, get some lunch downtown. It really is a fun event. Chocoholic Frolic.
Right on. Counselor?
My wife and I are at odds. I am sick of snow and she wants more, so. That's it. I'm sick of snow.
That's all you got?
That's all I got.
That's plenty. Happy Martin Luther King Day to everybody. Just want to say, give a shout out to Church of God in Christ. Were they putting it on? Down at the loft, anyway, they're having the Martin Luther King program. We got to be a part of that at the very beginning, but we had to dip out. But it's always nice to be invited, and they always have such a wonderful program. They've got some delicious food. Aunt Vivian made pulled pork, so gotta get in some of that action. And also, just want to give a shout out to the Great River Christian School for allowing me to come and speak to the kids today. Go Eagles! Counselor?
John, who are you taking in the Super Bowl?
The Patriots, you got to.
All right, all right. I was just curious. Want to make sure it was on public record.
It's, I'm gonna go-
Happy MLK Day.
Get him, Breaker.
it's bad enough. I'm already hurting from the snow. Go ahead, pick on me.
James?
A couple of comments. Some of the topics that you've brought up, parking, we talked about them staff-wise, parking, garbage not being in the alleys. In terms of ease of city services, they certainly would make things easier. However, they raise a lot of political issues that is very much a decision for this group, because there are winners and losers in those discussions, and you all are the ones who have to live with it. So be careful where you go with those kinds of discussions.
Tough to make that decision. until we have the
But
audience
again,
process.
the topics themselves from ease of being able to do some of the things that need done, it does make it easier. Leaf pickup, extending seasons. If you were to ask Don what his staff can accomplish, you see he's got a stiff neck trying to,
He's smiling on the outside, but that smile's only skin deep.
the specials that we run now, the crew is typically, they don't take their vacations. They try not to call in sick during those times. They're their busiest times. The more you extend that, the harder it is for an existing staff to handle the services that need to be done, and you very quickly move into a position where you can do it, but you start to have to think about adding staff as part of that conversation. So everything, there's always a give and take, and it's doing and even the question of what weeks. We guess on weeks. When is it historically the right weeks? And sometimes it's too early, and sometimes it's too late, both in the spring and in the fall. And you're always going to be chasing, trying to figure out where are the perfect weeks for doing it. But in the spring especially, we're very limited time-wise, the way we're set up right now with the citywide cleanup, trying to get that accomplished by is that Memorial Day that we have in the spring? Trying to get that wrapped up by then. We essentially, as they plan the calendar for when cleanup can occur, they back up from Memorial Day, and then they do the leaf pickup. They back up from citywide cleanup for what weeks are available to do those services. But folks would it be true and that can you always take out to the landfill, self-haul? Is always an option, even outside of those weeks. And I know not everyone has that option available to them, but we try to do what we can to accommodate. That's just, there are limitations for what you can do without creating other things that you have to decide how you're gonna make it work. Budget meetings next week. We have a regular work session on Monday at 4:30, which is followed by, includes Eric making his budget.
Sweet.
Nick is on Tuesday at 5 o'clock? And then Thursday is listed as follow-up, and we may see Eric following up on that one. I don't know. We'll see how he does on Monday for time. I think the work session is gonna be a decent length agenda as it is, and it's just kind of see how it plays out, whether Eric's still making a presentation that night, or you're just sort of doing some wrap-up, some questions, and if there's some follow-up to things that you want to address. This week, several of you I think are involved in going to the chamber dinner on Friday night, so make sure you keep that on your calendars for those that are doing that.
What time does it start? 5 or 6?
I thought it was 6:30.
I want to say
6 to
it's
6:30.
5, is it 5:30 is the social hour?
Yeah, and then I
then
think it starts at
6:30 is the
6:30.
dinner.
There you go.
TEMA building has been through the process of, well, it's been through a process. They moved the fences back on 3rd Street this week. Today, as of today, blocked off the entire street again on that side. I think they're doing cabling
Yeah.
of the facility, of the building today, and their plans are to start that demo this week. This is a horrible weather week for doing that, but that it is their plan to start doing that demo this week. We'll see how that proceeds, but they've got the dumpster set up. I know the building just to the west of them is one that, what?
The Gypsy
The
building.
Gypsy was one, they had some concerns about making sure they could protect it, and they started getting stuff set up, trying to protect that structure for what might happen with that demo, this last week. Even with this discussion earlier about that had the catalyst sites in this plan, they talked about taking the Moose building off. Well, the Moose building's back on. There isn't something happening at that site. So things change pretty quickly, just during the course of this project, that things go through a lot of different iterations of what might happen. We're going to, I think we'll at least have a discussion with Southeast Iowa Regional Planning about trying to put together a marketing proposal for the old PD building, and bring that forward for you for discussion. We've built it into the CIP as a reminder, as a demo for a backstop, using TIF funding to do. But if we can get that remarketed to someone else, though, that's something that we'd prefer to see happen.
Saves us $600,000.
Yeah. The pool is on for the public hearing on the specs.
Yep.
We don't have engineered stamped documents yet.
Not as of yet.
So, just want you to have an understanding, our staff is not in a position where they're comfortable with bids proceeding yet.
Okay.
This is on, we've got a public hearing set for that, but right now, if it was today, our staff would be saying they're not recommending that you do this at this point.
We met with them and went through some items that they need to still address, and I guess they're working through those, but yeah, we need plans and specs, and looking at doing it in 2 phases. The pool deck is one project, and then coming back, hopefully in a short time period, for the pool house upgrades, and then the storage building as a separate project.
And so there's concerns from just the original document isn't engineered stamped. There's several things that your staff has pointed out in terms of what you need to see before you're gonna be willing to accept it. I think the larger or secondary concern is, how does the second phase fit in with that first phase? And hopefully some of those details get fleshed out, but this is, there's still a lot of moving pieces with that. And then you met with Y&J Properties.
Met with the architect and construction contractor for the building at 4th and Valley.
And they're in the middle of, right now, their SHPO environmental review process. You've at least been able to start looking at some of the designs on that, and they're, from what I gathered, they're on task and on target for moving
Proceeding
forward.
and looking to start construction, or start moving forward as soon as they get approval from SHPO.
Yeah, they have 45 days, or SHPO still
Up
has
to
45
45
days for a
yeah.
comment, and they'll probably use almost every one of them.
Yep.
And I think that's it for what I had.
Put it on again, you looked good.
That's all you got?
That's it.
It's plenty.
I know, it's more than you wanted.
All right, well, we appreciate you guys tonight. Can I entertain a motion?
Motion closed.
Second.
Moved in second, twice. Kathleen?
McCampbell,
Aye.
Rinker,
Aye.
Phillips,
Aye.
Graham Murray.
Aye.
This meeting's adjourned. Good night,